Hello, hello, hello. So today we are talking about legendary actress Diahann Carroll, whose resume would be coveted by any young and aspiring actress. Or aspiring actress. They don't have to be young. Anyone trying to make it in Hollywood today. Ms. Carroll triumphed low self-esteem that men preyed on, racism from whites and blacks, and the fear of being a single woman. And I'm going to tell you all about it. Diahann Carroll made her film debut in a supporting role in the 1954 film Carmen Jones, starring Harry Belafonte and Dorothy Dandridge. She won her only Tony Award, the first time for a Black woman, in 1962 for her role in the Broadway musical No Strings. She also received multiple Emmy, Golden Globe, and Grammy nominations for her acting and singing performances. In 1990, she received her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and in 2011, she was inducted in the Television Academy Hall of Fame. But back to the men in her life. Let's talk about Miss Carroll's messy love life. Hello, my name is Tamika, and whether you stumbled upon Junkie for a Story or are here by intention, thank you for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if so, please give it a like and subscribe. And don't forget to click the bell to turn on notifications. That way you won't miss out whenever I release new videos. There will be a link in the description for the memoir that I reference in this episode, Diahann Carroll, The Legs Are the Last to Go. If you want more info about the book, you know what to do. And now, back to the video. Diahann Carroll is known for movies like Claudine, The Natalie Cole Story, and Paris Blues. She is the first actress to star in a TV sitcom with the title role in Julia that aired for 3 seasons. She approached Aaron Spelling to write The First Black Bitch. Those are Carroll's words, not mine. And played Dominique Devereaux on the popular 70s TV drama Dynasty. I'm sorry, Dynasty came out in the 80s. It aired from 1981 to 1989. She also played the same character in the spin-off series, The Cobys. And when most actresses over 50 were cornered into portraying the widow and other old lady roles, Carroll sank her teeth into coveted parts that kept her legacy alive. She received an Academy Award nomination for her performance in Claudine with James Earl Jones, an Emmy nomination for Best Actress in a TV show for Julia. She introduced herself to a younger generation of fans with appearances in Grey's Anatomy, for which she received an Emmy nomination, as well as the TV series White Collar. She received an Emmy nomination and a Golden Globe win to go along with the 1962 Best Actress Tony Award she won for her starring role in the Broadway musical No Strings. Diahann Carroll's final role before retiring from acting was in The Masked Saint in 2016. So that tells you a little bit about Miss Diahann Carroll's coveted acting career. And now let's get into her troubled personal life. She's got some stories to tell, okay? First, I must say, it's a shame that I only found her autobiography, and there's not many. I don't know if they have not been republished or if they're just too old. I don't know what happened, but as far as biographies, I don't see anyone writing a biography about Diahann Carroll. I just see her autobiography, which is odd. I find that odd because she had such a stellar career, such a long lasting career, and you would think biographers and historians would tell her story, but I mean, especially with all the accolades and all the first that she experienced in her career, you would think someone would write her biography, especially since the one she wrote is, I believe it was published in 2008. Let me confirm that. Yes, it was 2008. So, yeah, it's time for an update. Diahann Carroll began an affair with a married actor by the name of James Edwards when she was 19 years old. One day, Edwards told her to undress, and then he looked her up and down and told her to wait there in the hotel room that they were in and instructed her not to leave until he told her to. He didn't come back for her until the next day. And yes, she was still waiting there, obediently for him. She chalked it up to low self-esteem. This is the woman we are about to get to know through her lovers and husbands. She married her first husband, Monty Kay, a Jewish man who was a music producer. They had her only child, a daughter named Suzanne, in an attempt to save their marriage. She admits to being too immature to respect his wanting time alone for his own interest. She also was still accustomed to being doted on by her parents to survive a marriage at that time. Her father did not approve of the marriage to a white man and therefore did not attend the wedding. He later came around once he saw how much Monty Kay loved his daughter. But it did take some time. While married to Monty Kay, and before she became a mother, Carroll began an unconsummated romance with fellow actor Sidney Poitier, who was then married to his first wife, Juanita Hardy, with whom he had 4 daughters. At that time, he had not yet reached Black Hollywood royalty, or Hollywood royalty, with notable films of the 60s such as In the Heat of the Night, Lilies in the Field, and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. They met on the set of Porgy and Bess. That was in 1959. The film also starred Dorothy Dandridge, Sammy Davis Jr., and Pearl Bailey. And originally, Diahann Carroll didn't want to be in this film. She didn't like the way it depicted Black people, she felt like, in a negative way. But it was her husband, Monty Kay, who encouraged her to take the role, saying it would be a good look for her on her portfolio. So she joined the cast and came in contact with Sidney Poitier. Poitier said in People magazine in 1980 about Diahann Carroll, she was confident, inviting, sensuous, and she moved with a rhythm that absolutely tantalized me. I invited her to dinner, telling her that since we were both married, we would talk about our absent loved ones. And we did. I acted very, very gentlemanly for weeks. But halfway through the picture, we fell in love. As I got to know her, I realized she was one of the brightest women I had ever known. He's so poetic, isn't he? All right. The feelings were mutual, okay? Carroll said of Poitier, he was this incredibly beautiful jet black man with fierce eyes and the smooth gape of the panther, cheekbones beyond fabulous. You definitely can sense the sexual tension, to say the least. So, both actors were married and in love with one another. But Diahann Carroll was a very sheltered and timid girl, young girl at this time. She wasn't quite ready for Sidney. And he noticed her immaturity and inexperience. But back to her being the brightest woman he'd ever known, one of. It was her intelligence and ambition that I believe caused, well, not I believe, based on her recounting their affair, it was one of the tensions in their relationship. It's also the reason I believe he would have never married Diahann Carroll. Her ambition inflamed his insecurity. Now, we got to put things in perspective. He was a successful and accomplished man in a day when a man was perceived as not man enough if he couldn't provide for his family so his wife could stay home and tend to the children and other domestic duties. He was more experienced and mature than the sheltered and naive 24-year-old Carol. They, at some point, made a promise to each other more than once that they would leave their spouses and get married. Carol kept her promise and told her husband Kay that she was in love with Portier and leaving him for the actor. However, Portier did not do the same. He said that his wife, Juanita Hardy, would destroy him. Obviously, he was at this point still making a name for himself in Hollywood, and his career meant a lot to him. Also, they had four daughters together, and he, I guess, had some trepidation about how she would respond to the divorce. So he stayed in the marriage. And Carol, she found this out after she already told her husband she was leaving him. So again, this went on for a number of years, back and forth, back and forth. They were on and off. And, Portier would convince her to leave her husband. Then he'd get cold feet. She'd go back home to her husband. So after getting her heart broken by Mr. Tibbs, Carol returned to Monte Kay and did what her mother and sister-in-law told her would surely cure her broken marriage. She had a baby. She tried to be the faithful wife and mother, but she knew in her heart she just wasn't in the marriage anymore. Finally, she left Kay for good, knowing she was getting no commitment from Sidney Portier, and she busied herself with work. And then Sidney came back into the picture again, asking Carol's commitment yet again. And this time, Portier put a down payment on a home for them to share. Carol decorated the home and was ready for this new chapter with her and Sidney and her daughter, Suzanne. This time, Portier did leave his wife. However, he told Carol he had one condition. He wanted her to send her daughter to stay with her parents so that they could live as a couple, just the two of them, for 6 months before they married. Diahann Carroll refused. My guess is Portier was feeling guilty about the fact that he had left his wife and children to be with Carol. And he probably did not want them, his children, maybe even his wife, his estranged wife, to see him playing daddy to another girl. I mean, I can only imagine the ambivalence he had about walking away from his first wife and children, whom I'm sure he loved, obviously, and felt obligated to, and may have felt like he let them down by leaving their mother and breaking up the family. He claimed he did not want to jump from one marriage to another so quickly, and that's why he had that condition. Sidney Portier said, "It was then that our relationship started to unravel. Because once Carol refused to let her daughter stay with her parents, she began to see other people. And Mr. Tibbs did not take too well to that. Carroll said in her autobiography, The Legs Are the Last to Go, it was then that she started to see other people. Oh. Sydney called me at my hotel, yelling profanity, calling her a whore, a tramp. He said, I know he just left your bed. I won't have you running around with other men. You belong to me. She said it was then that she saw his insecurities. He no longer was this regal, stoic figure. They said their goodbyes for the last time, and she knew it was the last time. The two consequently moved on from this affair. Portier married Joanna Shimkus, who he had 2 daughters with, and she remained his wife until his death in 2022. Carroll married 3 more times after this relationship before living out her golden years as a single and happy woman. Okay, so then she began a brief and tumultuous affair with yet another actor by the name of Alan Marshall. She said he was a handsome black actor, but not a star. He moved into her mansion without her knowing, without her permission, while she was out of town working. So that right there tells you the kind of person he is and the kind of disrespect she was in for. Alan knew which buttons to press to get Carroll riled up, and he liked to press them, poking at her insecurities. My guess is because maybe he was jealous of her success. He was verbally and physically abusive. It was her fear of being alone that kept her in this toxic relationship. But she drew the line at him targeting her daughter, Suzanne. When he started yelling at her, that's when Carroll came to her senses. After suffering one of the most brutal beatings she ever received, with him kicking her in her face, she left him for good. And then there is the long-term and serious relationship she had with TV journalist David Frost. Now, I must say, I was quite surprised by this one. I mean, we know she likes to date outside of her race, so that didn't surprise me. It's just from what I know of him just as a journalist, I don't know why I was surprised by this, but given her intellect and the way she speaks and what she likes to converse about, I can see how they became attracted to one another. Frost was a good man, as she describes him, but she, with all her baggage, sabotaged this relationship every chance she got. And you'll learn as you read the book, if you choose to, that Miss Diahann Carroll is not receptive to a nice man simply loving her. She tends to go for the bad guys. I mean, she might not admit that, but that's where she ends up. So with Frost, she describes a loving relationship, but admits to throwing temper tantrums and questioning his intentions and provoking arguments with him. I don't know if this was for attention or what, but she definitely was the cause of the ruin of this, what appeared to be a great relationship. So she met Frost in 1970 when she was in the 3rd season of her TV show, Julia. She appeared on his talk show, and she said it felt like a first date, all the fun they were having conversing with one another. Unlike her marriage to Monty Kay, neither she nor Frost suffered negative consequences for being in an interracial relationship once they went public with it. It was highly publicized in the media and well received by the press and the public, it looks like. For some reason, Frost suffered through her difficult behavior and insecurities. Well, not for some reason. I think it's because he truly loved her. One day, Frost handed Carroll two jewelry boxes. One had a brooch, the other had an engagement ring. He assured her he would be okay with whichever decision she made. She accepted the engagement ring, but asked him for his patience with her while she contemplated marriage. This would be her second marriage. But then came Freddie. So she met Las Vegas resident and fashion designer Freddie Glasson. He owned a couple of apparel shops, but he was nowhere near her level of success. She described him as a demonstrative man. He was ostentatious and he lacked the sophistication her previous lovers had, but she felt in control in this relationship. And I think that's what enticed her the most, because I think her autonomy and authority was taken away from her in the previous relationships she had. In this relationship, she was the star and the breadwinner. One day, Freddie confessed to his friends that he was in love with Diahann and didn't know why she wouldn't marry him. Apparently, that's all he had to say. They were engaged. They had an engagement party, and David Frost called Diahann to confirm the nuptials. Now, keep in mind, she was engaged to David Frost. She accepted his engagement, but yeah, things happen, and so I guess commitments change. So she told Frost that the rumors were true, and like the gentleman he was, he wished her the best. Carroll claims that once they got married, Freddie changed swiftly, revealing his jealous side. He did not like her to have professional relationships with men. Then one time she came home and, he was feeling a little amorous, but she wasn't in the mood. They got into a heated argument and hotel security had to ask Freddie to leave. He filed for divorce the next day, then tried to renege in a phone call to her. I guess he realized that, once he filed for divorce, that meant she wouldn't have to pay him alimony. I mean, that's what I'm guessing, since he's the one who filed for divorce, but she's the one with the money. So I'm sure he was trying to make up with her because he realized how foolish he was. But she said, and I quote, "The marriage never made sense in the first place." And that was that. So she lost one great love for puppy love, all for it to end in divorce. Her second marriage, began and ended in 1973. Which brings us to her third husband, Robert Diahann. He was 24 years old at the time, and she was 40. Robert worked for Jet Magazine when they began dating, and he was a smart guy. She liked him because of the stimulating conversations they would have. He attended Morehouse College on scholarship at the age of 15 and could talk about scholarly subjects with Carroll, which she thoroughly enjoyed. He pursued her unabashedly, even though he was only separated from his wife, with whom he had one child. Then he invited Diahann Carroll on a trip to St. Thomas, where she overheard him bragging on the phone to someone that he was with the one and only Diahann Carroll. That's when she realized his intentions and how he misrepresented himself. It made her uncomfortable, but not uncomfortable enough to leave him. They got engaged, and she let him arrange the wedding that took place at Columbia University, which included complete coverage in Jet magazine. Robert had flashy taste in a modest income. So this would become the downfall of their marriage. He started buying Ferraris and other lavish accessories to flaunt his wealth that he acquired by way of marrying an older and successful Hollywood star. Carroll says she sold her Beverly Hills mansion and moved to Oakland to be with Robert. But then he quit his job to go into public relations in Los Angeles. He thought he could ride Miss Carroll's coattails and garner some celebrity clients through her. But things didn't work out that way. So first he approached Sammy Davis Jr., who declined, leaving his manager to go become a client to this new untested guy. I mean, that doesn't make sense. But and then Sammy Davis Jr. also gave him a word of advice. He said, don't become Mr. Diahann Carroll, okay? That's not a good look. So then, still persistent, Robert approached Quincy Jones to sign with him. And again, Quincy Jones turned him down. I mean, he was aiming a bit too high. These are accomplished and established celebrities. Like, why would they ditch the representation they already have to become the client of some 24-year-old guy who's just starting out? I mean, the answer sounds kind of obvious to me, but I guess it wasn't to Robert. So, he even asked his wife to become his client. And yeah, she said no too. Diahann Carroll was stupid when it came to love, but she wasn't that stupid, okay? So he began drinking heavily and staying out late. She could tell his lack of progress in his new venture was taking a toll on him. He became despondent and just wasn't the vibrant and charismatic person she first met. One day he said to her, you're always going to be all right, aren't you? You're always going to land on your feet. You will never fail. I mean, she thought, yeah, I guess so. I am Diahann Carroll. So she went on to rehearsal, and she later found out that Robert was speeding on Mulholland Drive when he lost control of the wheel. He was on a winding road when he crashed and died. Carol went into a deep depression, wearing all black for months. None of her friends could get through to her. Finally, her mother snapped her out of her grief. She said, there's nothing you can do for Robert anymore. You're still a young woman with a lifetime ahead of you. And that was it. She moved on. And now we arrive at Diahann Carroll's fourth and final husband, Mr. Vic Damone. Vic Damone was an American traditional pop and big band singer and actor. He ran with the Rat Pack in the 60s and 70s. But when he met Diahann Carroll, he was basking in senior living glow, His career was no longer as vibrant as it once was. And it sounds like he was okay with that. He wanted to rest at this point. He wanted to play golf, hang out with friends and family, and, relax. That's the impression I got, okay? So, Diahann talks about the good days with Vic Damone, where they would spend weekends in New York, at home eating meals prepared by Vic, who was a great cook. Now, he was an Italian man who loved cooking lavish meals, but his work ethic was not as robust. And actually, the problems started before the marriage, okay? And they were palpable. Carroll said right around the day they were scheduled to marry, their friends and family had to have a talk it out with them. They said, look, you're either going to get married or not, okay? But stop acting like kids. So you kind of saw where this was going before it started. But, Diahann Carroll, the consummate professional, she will see a disaster through, okay? So one day, Vic Damone tells Diahann Carroll to have dinner with his financial advisor and that advisor's wife. But Vic Damone, he wasn't joining her. So, she thought, okay, this is just a dinner date. I'll go because Vic asked me to. She shows up, and what do you know? Said wife is not in attendance. Okay, so, she's immediately on alert when she sees that he's alone. She suggested to him, that they could reschedule since the wife isn't there. And the advisor said, oh, no, we can still have dinner. Carroll said, there was something about his manner that raised my antenna. He was over solicitous. The advisor tried to pour her a glass of wine, and she turned her glass over before he could. She wanted to make it clear this is going to be all business, okay? And then when things got a little too aggressive, she got up and left. But the advisor followed her out to her car. He even tried to get in her car. And then, she had to scratch his face. And she said, I wanted to scratch his face to make sure to leave the marks that he would have to explain to his wife. But I get the feeling, I get the impression from what she said, his wife knows what kind of man her husband is, okay? She knows what's up, okay? Women who marry guys like that, they know. And I'm sure Diahann Carroll wasn't the first, okay? So she gets home and she tells Vic Damone what happened. And he responds, with nonchalance. He could care less, okay? He's just apathetic about it all. Well, not even apathetic, because the way she explains it, it sounds like he was blaming her for the whole situation. He said, well, why did you go? Well, why did you do this? Well, why did you do that? And she said, well, I mean, Vic, you asked me. She is being the obedient wife, and he blames her for a man propositioning her. But my question is, why are you associating with someone like that? And furthermore, why did you send your wife to have dinner with a man she hadn't met yet? Why didn't you attend the dinner with her? I mean, it already sounds suspect, okay? So I think we know what Vic Damone and that financial advisor had in mind. I think they come from the school of, she's a black woman, they're easy. Vic may have owed the guy some money, and he was like, okay, this is how I'll pay off this debt, okay? Just send your wife and I'll cross it off the list, okay? Now, I don't know if Carol was catching on to who Vic Damone was, but she did say from that point on the trust was lost. Still, I don't think that's good enough. But, that's me. And Carol, she even compared a successful woman to an aspiring actress on the casting couch, as far as the kind of men, and I use the term loosely, they attract. But either way, she remained married to Vic Damone. But his fragile masculinity, by Carol's account, was incongruent with Carol's successful career. Once a woman boldly appeared at Damone's engagements, his singing engagements, and made it clear to Carol that she wanted victim on for herself. And I guess Carol, seeing how things were going in the marriage, she didn't put up a fight. She knew the end was near and inevitable. So she said Victimone left her after 10 years of marriage for another woman. You do get the impression from her account that he was dying to become a kept man. And to some extent, he was a kept man with Carol. I mean, she did help him pay off his Palm Springs home. But this other woman, apparently her pockets were deeper. And, with him wanting to work when he wants to, when he chooses to, and being more interested in golf, playing golf and hanging out with the friends and entertaining family at home, this wealthy woman, she's willing to tolerate all of that and handle the bill. So, decisions have to be made. So, Diahann out, wealthy single woman in. And that was her final marriage. And she finally came to terms with being a single woman and realized it's actually not all that bad. She enjoyed her golden years living in her condo and maintaining her meaningful friendships and relationships with her family. She was living the life. Once she let go of trying to live the happily ever after with a man, she was home free and smiling too. In her reflections on her lovers and husbands, Diahann Carroll admitted that she was not sexually positive and even described herself as prudish, and how that was to blame for some of her failed romances. She also confessed to being a vain person. And that's one of the things I respect about Miss Carroll. She knows who she is, and she doesn't portray herself to be anything different. But, I guess that comes with age. All right, well, that does it for this episode. Thank you for watching and listening. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you choose. And let me know what you think of Miss Carroll being the first Black bitch on TV. That's how she referred to Miss Dominique Devereaux. I remember her character, but I didn't think she was all that bitchy. I don't know, I think they could have amped it up just a little bit, but she was quite proud of getting that role. Well, I will put a link in the description for the autobiography, Diahann Carroll, The Legs Are the Last to Go. If you are interested in picking up the book or you want to know more, go on and click that link. And yeah, that does it for me. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.